In our world, telling the truth is forbidden. 20 years ago, the government decided that honesty was a disease, something that spread chaos, discord, and rebellion. They said that truth leads to suffering, and that the only way to protect society was to eliminate it completely. At first, people resisted. There were protests, riots. People tried to fight back. But one by one, they disappeared. Now, no one questions the law. No one dares to. Lying has become our way of life. You cannot say you are tired. You cannot say you are unhappy. You cannot say you hate your job, because the moment you do, you are marked for correction. You won't be arrested. You won't be sent to prison. You will simply vanish. I had spent my entire life following the rules. I knew what I could and couldn't say. I trained myself to smile when I wanted to frown, to nod in agreement when I wanted to scream. And then, today, I made a mistake. It happened so fast that I barely even realized it. I was in the office, drinking coffee with Ethan, my co-worker. We were having a meaningless conversation, exchanging empty pleasantries like everyone else. And then, without thinking, I said it. I hate this job. The words slipped out before I could stop them. For a moment, everything froze. Ethan's smile disappeared. His face went blank, like a machine resetting itself. Then, just as quickly, he forced a small laugh. A fake, hollow laugh. "Yeah, I know what you mean," he said. And that was it. We continued talking like nothing had happened. But deep down, I knew. I had broken the law. I had said the truth. And Ethan had heard me. I told myself it was fine. Maybe he wouldn't report it. Maybe he didn't care. But the fear lingered. I spent the rest of the day in a haze, my mind spiraling. Every time I looked at Ethan, I wondered, did he tell someone? Is he pretending everything is fine? Or is he just waiting? Then I got home, and my phone vibrated. I hesitated before looking at the screen. Some part of me already knew what it was. A single message. "You have been selected for correction. Await further instructions." I stared at the words, my pulse pounding. Correction. I had heard rumors about it, whispered stories exchanged in dark corners. No one ever saw what happened to those who were corrected. They were just gone. I told myself it was a mistake. Maybe it was a glitch. Maybe they sent it to the wrong person. And then I saw them, 2 men standing across the street. They weren't knocking on my door. They weren't making any attempt to hide. They were just watching me, waiting. I felt a cold rush of panic flood through me. They're here for me. For the first time in my life, I acted on instinct. I ran. I grabbed my jacket and sprinted to the back door, barely remembering to close it behind me. The stairs blurred as I rushed down them, my feet hitting the pavement so fast I almost tripped. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to get away. The streets were crowded, but no one paid me any attention. People walked past me with their artificial smiles and rehearsed conversations, oblivious to the fact that I was running for my life. I pushed through them, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My mind raced. Where do I go? Where can I hide? Then I heard the sound that made my stomach drop. Footsteps. Not behind me, beside me. I turned my head and saw one of them. The men in black. He wasn't running. He was walking, keeping perfect pace with me, like he knew exactly where I was going. His expression didn't change. Cold, blank, emotionless. I bolted. I ducked into an alleyway, my legs burning, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. My mind screamed at me to think, to find a way out. I turned a corner. Dead end. A brick wall loomed in front of me. No, 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 no. I spun around, ready to run back. He was there, standing at the entrance of the alley. He hadn't chased me. He had simply walked, like he knew exactly where I would end up. I backed away, trapped. He tilted his head slightly as if studying me, and then he turned and walked away. Confused, I stayed frozen for a moment. My whole body shook with adrenaline. Then I noticed something. The wall. It wasn't just a wall. There was a narrow metal door, barely visible in the darkness, a door that had been left slightly open. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the handle and slipped inside. The air changed immediately. Cold, damp, heavy. The space around me was pitch black. I forced myself to breathe. Where am I? As my eyes adjusted, I realized I was in a basement. The door clicked shut behind me. For a moment, I just stood there, chest heaving, trying to slow my breathing. My ears strained for any sound from outside. Footsteps. Voices. Anything. Silence. They hadn't followed me. Or maybe they didn't need to. I turned my attention to the space around me. It was cold, the air damp with the scent of mildew and rust. I reached out blindly, my fingers grazing rough concrete. The floor beneath me was uneven, littered with debris. I wasn't alone. Something moved in the darkness. I froze. A whisper, barely audible. "You think you're the first." I whipped around, my heart slamming against my ribs. My eyes had begun to adjust to the dimness, revealing a figure standing just a few feet away. A man. Pale, hollow-cheeked, his clothes ragged, hanging loose on his thin frame. His eyes, vacant, lifeless. Behind him, I saw more. Figures, crouched in the shadows. Some sitting against the walls, others standing motionless, their heads slightly tilted, as if listening for something I couldn't hear. They weren't looking at me. They weren't looking at anything. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The man didn't answer right away. He just smiled, a slow, unnatural smile. "We are the ones who told the truth." My stomach twisted. No, that wasn't possible. The government erased people who broke the law. They disappeared. They weren't left behind. "But how?" I stammered. "If they found you, why are you still here?" The man tilted his head slightly, as if confused by my question. "They don't kill us," he said. "They do something worse." Something shifted behind him, a faint rustling, the sound of feet scraping against concrete. The figures in the shadows began to stir. For the first time, I noticed their faces. Blank, not just expressionless, empty, like they had once been people, but had forgotten how to be human. A chill ran down my spine. "What did they do to you?" I whispered. The man sighed, as if he had answered this question 1,000 times before. "They erased our memories." I took a step back, my body screaming at me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. "And why do you still remember?" I asked. The man's smile widened. "I don't." The word sent a sharp electric jolt through my brain. I stared at him, my mind racing, and then I realized he wasn't smiling at me. He was mirroring me, the exact tilt of my head, the exact placement of my feet, like a reflection. I looked around at the others again. The way they stood, the way they moved. Some of them weren't moving at all. They were standing exactly like me, like they were waiting for something, waiting for me to understand. "No," I whispered. "No, that's not—" The man stepped forward, closing the space between us. "You've already been corrected," he said softly. "You just haven't realized it yet." My breath caught in my throat. I tried to think back, tried to remember how I got here. I had run from my apartment. I had fled through the streets. I had hidden in this basement. But before that, before the message, before Ethan, before the office, there was nothing. No memories, just emptiness. The realization hit me like ice water. I had already been here. I had already been corrected. This wasn't me escaping. This was me waking up. I lifted my hands, staring at my fingers, waiting to feel something real. Nothing. A red light flickered overhead. The door behind me creaked open. A shadow stretched across the floor. I turned, slowly. Figures in black suits stepped inside. Not men, something else. The moment I saw them, the fear inside me died. Because suddenly I understood. I wasn't being taken. I had never left. I had never been running. This was correction. This was the end. Or maybe it was just the beginning. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps bring more stories like this to life. Would you like to see a sequel? Maybe a story from the perspective of someone inside the correction facility, or a rebel trying to escape the system? Let me know in the comments what you think happened next. And remember, never tell the truth.